It was supposed to be a fresh start. When Emily's mother inherited the old Victorian house from a distant aunt she barely remembered, it felt like a blessing. They needed a change after the divorce, a place far away from the noisy city, a place to heal. Emily, 13 years old and still carrying invisible scars, wasn't thrilled about leaving her friends behind, but even she had to admit, there was something magical about the towering old house with its crooked chimney and wraparound porch. It looked like something out of a fairy tale. At least from the outside. From the moment they crossed the threshold, Emily felt it. Heavy, watching presence. The house groaned and whispered even when the wind was still. Shadows seemed to stretch just a little too far, and cold spots lingered no matter how high they cranked the furnace. Her mother brushed it off as old house creaks, and busied herself with unpacking. Emily, however, found it harder to ignore the unease that coiled tighter around her chest with every passing hour. The attic fascinated her the most. It was locked when they arrived, the brass handle tarnished and stiff. Her mother said they'd deal with it later. But Emily was drawn to it, like a moth to a flame. The attic door seemed almost to hum when she pressed her ear against it, as if secrets whispered from the other side. 3 nights later, when her mother was fast asleep, Emily found the old skeleton key sitting on the kitchen counter, almost as if it had been placed there just for her. She didn't hesitate. Clutching a flashlight in one hand and the key in the other, she crept up the narrow staircase, the wooden steps groaning under her slight weight. Her heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat in her ears. The key fit perfectly. With a reluctant creak, the attic door swung inward. The air inside was thick with dust and the scent of old wood. Stacks of boxes loomed like silent sentries, and cobwebs draped from the low, slanted ceiling. Her flashlight beam caught something at the far end of the room. It was a trunk, ornate, heavy, and oddly pristine compared to the decay around it. Drawn by a mix of curiosity and dread, Emily approached. She knelt before the trunk and opened it. Inside, nestled in yellowed lace, was a doll. A porcelain doll, dressed in a faded blue dress with tiny white shoes. Its black hair was glossy, and its painted eyes, an unnatural shade of icy blue, stared up at her with unsettling clarity. It was beautiful. It was horrifying. The doll seemed almost alive, its mouth frozen in a slight, mocking smile. Something inside Emily whispered to close the trunk and leave. But her fingers acted on their own, reaching in and lifting the doll out. The moment her skin touched its porcelain surface, a sudden chill shot up her arm, so intense she gasped aloud. She staggered back, cradling the doll to her chest. Behind her, the attic door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Emily screamed and dropped the doll. The flashlight flickered and went out, plunging the attic into darkness so thick she could feel it pressing against her skin. She scrambled to the door, wrenching the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Her breath came in ragged sobs. In the suffocating blackness, she heard it, tiny, deliberate footsteps. The sound of small shoes tapping against the wooden floor. The flashlight sputtered back to life for just a moment. Just long enough for Emily to see the doll standing upright, its head tilted unnaturally, its lips stretched wider in that horrible smile. Emily bolted, slamming her shoulder against the door until it finally gave way. She tumbled out into the hallway, heart racing, face slick with tears. Behind her, the attic door swung closed with a quiet, almost satisfied click. She didn't tell her mother. How could she? She wasn't even sure what had happened. Maybe it was a dream, some twisted vision brought on by the stress of the move. She told herself that again and again, but it didn't help. Because every night after that, she heard it, the soft tap-tap of tiny footsteps pacing just above her ceiling. A week passed. Emily tried to avoid the attic completely, but the doll seemed to have other plans. One morning, she found it sitting at the foot of her bed, its blue eyes gleaming in the early light. She screamed, and her mother came running, but by the time she burst through the door, the doll was gone. "You're just having nightmares," her mother said, concern etched across her face. "It's the stress. You need to give it time." Emily nodded, but inside she knew better. The doll was real, and it was watching her. That night, Emily dreamt she was back in the attic. The doll stood at the center of the room, arms stretched wide. Its porcelain skin cracked and bled black tar. It whispered her name over and over in a voice that wasn't human. Emily woke screaming, her sheets twisted and damp with sweat. The next morning her mother was different, distant, distracted. Her eyes seemed a little too wide, her smile a little too stiff. When Emily asked if she was okay, her mother only murmured something about being tired and wandered off. As the days wore on, the house grew darker. Shadows twisted and danced even in the midday sun. Mirrors reflected things that weren't there. And sometimes Emily caught glimpses of a small figure darting just out of the corner of her eye. A flash of blue dress, the gleam of black hair. Emily decided she had to end it. She had to get rid of the doll. Arming herself with a heavy flashlight and a bottle of lighter fluid she found in the garage, she crept back into the attic. The trunk still sat there waiting. The doll perched atop it like a queen on her throne. For a moment Emily faltered. The doll's eyes seemed almost pleading now, its expression soft and sorrowful. But then she remembered the dreams, the footsteps, her mother's hollow gaze. She doused the doll in lighter fluid and struck a match. The flame sputtered, caught, and spread quickly across the doll's dress. Emily watched, heart pounding, as the porcelain skin blistered and blackened. The attic filled with acrid smoke. Emily coughed and stumbled backward, eyes streaming. She fled down the stairs, bursting into the cool night air. The fire alarm blared inside, and she heard her mother shouting. The fire department arrived quickly. They managed to put out the flames before they spread beyond the attic. The house was saved. Barely. But Emily knew it wasn't over. Because as she stood shivering on the lawn, watching the firefighters work, she saw it. In the window of the attic, framed by flickering light, stood the doll, unburned, smiling. And it waved at her. Emily didn't sleep that night. Even after the firefighters had left, after her mother had tried to soothe her with warm milk and empty reassurances, she couldn't close her eyes without seeing that doll's smile. Unburned, unchanged, alive. The attic had been sealed off after the fire, deemed too dangerous for entry. But Emily knew better. No amount of tape or plywood could keep that thing contained. Didn't need doors. It didn't need permission. She found her mother sitting motionless at the kitchen table the next morning, a cup of coffee cold and untouched in front of her. Her eyes were vacant, locked on the wall as if she were watching something no one else could see. "Mom?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. No answer. Her mother's lips moved, but it wasn't English. A low, guttural chant spilled from her throat, rhythmic and ancient. Emily stepped back, heart hammering. The chanting stopped abruptly, and her mother blinked, slowly turning to face her with that same too-wide smile. "I think you should go to the attic," she said calmly. Emily ran. She locked herself in her room, pushing a chair against the doorknob, tears streaking down her face. Her mother, whatever she had become, wasn't herself anymore. The doll had taken her, just like it had taken the house, just like it would take Emily. That night, the dreams were worse. She wasn't just in the attic, she was inside the doll. Trapped in porcelain skin, unable to scream. Her limbs moved by invisible strings. She watched through its eyes as it walked through the house, touching walls, whispering to shadows. Her body, her real body, lay motionless in bed, eyes open, mouth slack. When she woke, her arms ached as if they had been forced to move all night long. She needed answers. She waited until her mother left to take a walk, her movements strange and stiff. Then Emily snuck into the study where her mother kept the old documents inherited with the house. There, buried under tax forms and brittle newspapers, she found something, a leather-bound journal with a broken clasp. The name embossed on the cover chilled her. Annabeth Griggs, the great-aunt who had left them the house. The entries were erratic, the handwriting growing more frantic with each passing page. One name repeated over and over: Lisette. Lisette had been a child, the daughter of a seamstress who lived in the house in the early 1900s. After her mother died suddenly, Lizette was left in the care of a cruel governess who hated children and locked her in the attic for hours at a time. One winter, after weeks of being neglected, Lizette caught pneumonia. She died alone in that attic, curled beside her favorite doll, her only friend. They buried Lizette but kept the doll. And that was the mistake. Annabeth had discovered it by accident. The doll whispered to her. First it was just dreams. Then it was voices. Then came the possession, her brother, her maid, her own husband. One by one the doll consumed them all. Annabeth sealed it in the trunk and locked the attic, swearing never to open it again. But she knew. She wrote it clearly in her final entry. The doll is not cursed. The doll is Lizette. She never left. And she is angry. Emily closed the journal, bile rising in her throat. Lizette wasn't a ghost. She was the doll, trapped, vengeful and alive. And now Emily had set her free. There was only one way left. Emily had to destroy her. Not the doll. The spirit inside. She remembered something from the journal. An entry Annabeth had scribbled hastily. It said, "Only the blood of the innocent can release her. But it must be offered willingly. Otherwise she takes what she wants." Emily knew what she had to do. That night, she waited until the house was quiet. The attic door stood open now, beckoning. She climbed the stairs slowly, a kitchen knife tucked in her hoodie pocket. Her heart pounding so loud it drowned out her thoughts. The attic was colder than before. The doll stood in the center of the room, just like in her dreams. But this time it spoke. "You came back," it whispered, its voice that of a child and something much older layered beneath. "Will you play with me?" Emily stepped forward, trembling. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm lonely," Lizette said. "Everyone leaves. Everyone forgets. But not you. You came. You killed them," Emily said, tears spilling. "You took my mom. You made this house evil." Lizette's eyes gleamed. "I was left to die in the cold. My mother is gone. My body is dust. But I'm still here. And I won't be alone anymore." Emily took out the knife. Her hands shook. "You want innocence. Take mine." The doll tilted its head. Emily raised the blade and slashed her palm, wincing as blood dripped onto the floor. "If this is what you want, take it. Take it and let my mom go. Let me go." The attic fell silent. For a moment nothing happened. Then the air shimmered like heat rising off asphalt. The doll screamed. Not a child's scream, but something ancient and full of rage. The attic trembled. Wind howled from nowhere. The doll's eyes rolled back, and black smoke poured from its mouth, swirling and twisting in the air. Emily collapsed to her knees, clutching her hand. The smoke spun faster, shrieking, then flew into the rafters and vanished. The attic went still. The doll collapsed, lifeless, its painted eyes now dull and cracked. Emily staggered downstairs, every step heavier than the last. She found her mother in the kitchen, blinking in confusion. What happened?" she murmured, rubbing her temples. "Why does everything smell like smoke?" Emily wrapped her arms around her and sobbed. They never spoke of the attic again. They moved out a week later, left everything behind. Years passed. Emily grew up, but the scar on her palm never faded. One rainy afternoon, in a different town, in a different life, she walked past an antique shop. Something in the window made her stop cold. Porcelain doll. Cracked. Dressed in faded blue. Smiling.